What's happening, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Once again, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, of course. And I'm really excited to dive into today's episode. A lot to discuss. In the last few days, I feel like it's just been a busy last few days for the Buffalo Bills and for Bills Mafia. A lot of things to be excited about, of course. The rundown of this episode features the fact that the Buffalo Bills have been very busy this late in the offseason. The Buffalo Bills making late offseason additions, and that's something that is music to the ears of Buffalo Bills fans with the names that the Bills have signed. The Bills have signed Leonard, Floyd, and Cameron Dantzler. Two very underrated additions here this late in the offseason. I'm very excited for these additions for the Bills, of course. I'll dive into those additions as well. Weighing the question, Dalvin Cook or DeAndre Hopkins, which move would you want to see the Buffalo Bills make out of those two moves? Maybe both. Talk about that, of course, as well. Ending the show today, Josh Allen, the Madden NFL 24 cover athlete. Why is this such a huge deal? I'll tell you why at the end of the show. But first, let's get right to it. The Buffalo Bills making late offseason additions here with Leonard, Floyd, and Cameron Dantzler. We'll dive into the Leonard Floyd signing first and foremost. I'm very pumped up for this move. I really like this addition for the Bills defense. The fact the Bills are making late season additions is one thing, but late season additions to the defensive side of the football felt like those are moves that needed to be made. And to get a Leonard Floyd caliber player this late in the offseason, I think is going to bode really well for this team. When Brandon Beane was asked about this move, it was a question of what made you decide to go down this path and bring in a Leonard Floyd type player. Brandon Beane just simply said, listen, we want to add, we always want to add, and to add a player of Leonard Floyd's caliber this late in the offseason was something that they just could not scoff at. And Ed Oliver, being that move was made to extend Ed Oliver prior to the Leonard Floyd move, that allowed the Buffalo Bills an opportunity to make a couple moves here. And Brandon Beane to basically make this a reality, right? As far as extending Ed Oliver when no one thought he would be, as far as that creating salary cap space, which allowed him to kind of, obviously make one move to make two more. Extending Ed Oliver allowed him to make more moves, and those more moves were adding to this defense and Leonard Floyd and Cameron Dantzler. And Leonard Floyd has had 30 sacks in the last 3 seasons in total. He's averaged 10 sacks per year. And had Leonard Floyd been on this team this past season, had he been on the Buffalo Bills this past season, he would have had 9 sacks, which would have led the team. Let's just say we take those 9 sacks. He would have led the team in sacks. What I'm trying to say there is that you take those stats that he had with LA and move them to Buffalo, he would have led the team in sacks. Pretty simple, right? But obviously, I think this is just another body to add to the rotation. That is their defensive line, that front 4, that front 7, that they're always trying to make much better, that they did not want to lose a player the caliber of Tremaine Edmonds, but they've added quite a few bodies over the course of the last few months here to this defense that have made things very interesting. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that new addition of Leonard Floyd fits within this defense. He's always been a player I've liked, dating back to his time in Chicago, as well with the Rams. So awesome move there by Brandon Beane. I'm really pumped up for that. But what will this do to motivate the guys on the team? So what will that do as far as Gregory Rousseau, Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa? I think this is a move that does kind of highlight the fact that those guys outside of Gregory Rousseau, who was tied for the team lead with Von Miller for the sack leader. Statistically, the sack leaders were Gregory Rousseau and Von Miller. Von missed some time. So the fact that he was one of their leading total sack leaders statistically says that there was something lacking in terms of their pass rush outside of Gregory Rousseau. And the microscope should be on guys like Ed Oliver, despite getting the extension. The microscope should be on guys like AJ Epinesa, as well as Boogie Basham and a few others. And hopefully Leonard Floyd can bring a little bit of fire to this unit and can bring a little bit of pressure, not just to the opposition, but to the players that are on the team, that, hey, we're bringing in these guys because you guys aren't really, playing to the highest of levels. Competition breeds success. And hopefully this is a little bit of a wake-up call for the guys that are on the team that, hey, they had to bring in a Leonard Floyd because they didn't feel like we were doing good enough. We need to do better. And that's another move that I think highlights that. Now, the next free agent addition that I want to go over here is Cameron Dantzler. And this is a very interesting one because I really felt that heading into the draft of, what year was he drafted? I believe it was 2020. I felt like Dantzler was a corner that I really liked. He came out of Mississippi State. He's tall. He's long. He's lanky. He can tackle really well. There were a lot of boxes that he checked off for me in terms of my evaluation of Dantzler, and he's fallen on some hard times. He was a third-round draft choice out of Mississippi State from the Minnesota Vikings, of course, selecting him 89th overall. And he spent 3 years there and wasn't really what they had anticipated. Didn't really quite fit the Zimmer-style defense, and certainly wasn't really a fit in Kevin O'Connell's led Minnesota Vikings. And I don't really know what defensive player is a fit, really, when you undergo that drastic of a change defensively from Mike Zimmer to an offensive coach with Kevin O'Connell. But he went to Washington last year. He was only a offseason practice squad member of the Washington Commanders, as he was claimed off of waivers by the Commanders. So he never played a down in actual NFL game snap-wise with the Commanders. He was cut by the Vikings in March of 2023, added 3 days later off of waivers by the Washington Commanders, and then he was released almost 2 months, a little over 2 months later by the Commanders on May 30th of 2023. And then 1 week later, signed by the Buffalo Bills to a 1-year contract. So being realistic here in regards to Cameron Dantzler, this is really a big opportunity for this player. I mean, he's bounced around. He went from Minnesota to Washington. He's been, cut, added on waivers, then cut by the team that added him on waivers. So league-wide, there was a month where he was, obviously going from the Vikings to the Commanders. There was a month where he was placed on injured reserve and then later reactivated. Placed on injured reserve in November, later reactivated on December 10th. So I'm wondering with Cameron Dantzler, if he's a player that is at a point where maybe teams are thinking he's on the outside looking in of what his best skill set was. Is he going to be what he was? The Buffalo Bills look at this and say, it's a win-win. We're not really hurting, whether he makes the team. We're gaining an asset if he makes the team. If he misses the team, then obviously we're good. But we're gonna find out. We want to take that chance on Dantzler and figure out whether he was worth the squeeze, so to speak. Is the juice worth the squeeze from Cameron Dantzler? And I think that Brandon Beane in the front office was more than willing to find that fact out within this signing. So this is a low risk, high reward move that, let's see what this kid's got. And for a lot of chances that the Bills take that are low risk, high reward, considered to be such, the Bills have a really good track record at hitting on these types of signings within a secondary, within a defense. So I'm really curious to see how Sean McDermott utilizes him, and it will come down to how Sean McDermott utilizes him because of the fact that McDermott is now the defensive play caller for the Buffalo Bills with Leslie Frazier now gone. So that's the way I see that going. I think that that's a worthy chance Dantzler's got a lot to his game that I like. He can tackle. He's long. He's rangy. I think a lot of defenses these days want taller corners, guys that are above 5'11" at the low side of things. If you're not, obviously there's facets to your game that make you elite in that realm as well, being on the shorter side of things. But if you're taller in this day and age, you're going up against taller, more physical receivers, as these receivers nowadays in today's NFL are more tall and lanky and more physical now than they've ever been. So I like the Dantzler signing. I like the last chance, hurrah that he's got here with the Bills. Hopefully he can make, a worthy opportunity out of this and make this team. I think there's a spot for him on the team. It's just a matter of him making his spot worth it. Obviously achieving that is an uphill battle that we'll see throughout training camp. So as we know that there's some late offseason moves here with Leonard, Floyd, and Cameron Dantzler coming to the Buffalo Bills this late in the offseason, there are two players here that I really wanted to discuss on this podcast today that are free agents, two very high-profile players that have been at the top of their position for a time in the National Football League, and that's Dalvin Cook and DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I know a lot of people want to, as I'm seeing here, a lot of people want to dive in on this. And I want you guys to dive in on this as well. The guys and gals that are tuning in right here, right now. And as I repost this podcast that's live right now, I'll repost it tonight. But who do you guys think the Bills should go after between Dalvin Cook, who is a recently released running back, longtime Minnesota Vikings running back, or would you want the Bills to stay on this path that we've wanted them to be on for a long time here as the DeAndre Hopkins talks continue, with DeAndre Hopkins visiting the Tennessee Titans one day and now today visiting the New England Patriots? Rumblings is that a visit with the Buffalo Bills and the Cleveland Browns has been scheduled, but we don't know for when, at some point within this next week. But if it were up to you, who would you guys want to go after? And it's a very interesting one for a lot of reasons. I want to say that, I've talked about DeAndre Hopkins and how this looks in terms of, honestly, right now, if you were to tell me that at any point DeAndre Hopkins would be a free agent, 3 years ago, I would have said you're nuts. But then the 3 years happened, and here he is. He's a free agent. But if you were to tell me that he'd be a free agent for more than 2 days, I would have said you were crazy as well. And it's been a couple weeks that DeAndre Hopkins has been a free agent. So I think that there's always the thought of the fans and that, we should go out and get this guy. And then there's the message around the league in regards to D-Hop and his skill set not being what it once was. Is that a thought, a lingering thought within the league? I think it might be. Now, with Dalvin Cook, you're talking about a different player, different position, of course, running back versus wide receiver. Running backs in this league really seem to whittle down by the time they're 28, 29, and we know by the time they're 30, it's very rare to see a running back at the level that he was once at during his prime years of 22 to 26, 27. Those are the years that a running back really hits their stride, pun intended. Pardon me. And I really feel that with Dalvin Cook, this is a move from the Vikings that signaled that Dalvin Cook is somewhat damaged goods. I hate referring to a player as such, but when the player is coming off of 4 straight solid seasons where he's getting a lot of carries, a lot of touches from one team, and then that one team says enough's enough, that means that the usage that player has had with one team has largely been with that one team, of course, and that team does not feel they can use him that way any longer. So that's why they decided to make this move. The question now remains, as far as Dalvin Cook's free agency hopes, does another team view Dalvin Cook the way that Minnesota viewed him the last 4 years? If that's the case, he will not be a free agent for long. If that's the case, Dalvin Cook visiting the Miami Dolphins, visiting the Denver Broncos, one of those two teams will sign him. Or will a team come out of the woodwork like Buffalo and say, hey, Dalvin, we got your little brother here. We think very highly of him, but we also think very highly of you. And could we see a situation where the Bills bring him in with the limited cap space that they do have just to make yet another addition to their offense? Wouldn't shock me. Wouldn't shock me at all. I think Brandon Beane's willing to do whatever it takes to make this team as good as it can be. It's just a matter of economics. Do the dollars make sense? Do the dollars and cents make sense? And the way I see it, it makes sense for the Bills. Does it make sense for Dalvin Cook? That I don't know. Does Dalvin Cook want to get paid? Does DeAndre Hopkins want to get paid? If either of these guys want to get paid, if that's the motivation, then the Bills will not be a fit for either of these guys, because the Bills are pretty strapped in terms of their salary cap situation with a load of talent on one team already. So remains to be seen. But if you had the choice between one or the other, who would you choose? I think a lot of people would choose DeAndre. Some people, though, might change from DeAndre to Dalvin Cook. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. So last and certainly not least on the Thomas Take Sports podcast today, I was really thrilled and really happy to witness a moment in Bills franchise history that my generation, as well as, which is, my generation is, anybody, around my age. I'm 31. And then there's a new generation, of course, that is gamers and they love Madden. And then the generation before mine, they kind of saw the rise of Madden, of course, as well, played it, at its first edition and things like that. But this is a big deal, guys. When the news broke that Josh Allen is the Madden NFL 24 cover athlete, I honestly had to take a second. And it literally goes back to a long, treacherous process that I can only close my eyes and envision moments of J.P. Lossman, moments of Trent Edwards, moments of other quarterbacks during the drought years, where if you were to tell me during those years that eventually the Buffalo Bills will get this 6'4", 240-pound freak of an athlete that can run like a deer, that can hurdle linebackers, that can throw 80 yards with the flick of his wrist in rain, sleet, or snow, especially sun, and that player will be out of Wyoming, and that player will be traded up for, and there'll be other quarterbacks that maybe people thought they should have taken when they take him, and this guy will take the city over, take the town over, and will become one of the biggest superstars. Pardon me. One of the biggest superstars in the National Football League. I would have said you're out of your mind. But to see the last 6 years come to fruition and leading to a moment like this, where I think it's good to feel legitimized. It's one thing for guys like me to say it, who are avid, diehard Buffalo Bills fans and cover the team and things like that on a podcast. But it's another for, the National Football League media to recognize Allen as a superstar, which leads him to being a transcendent superstar on the Madden cover. It's a huge honor to be instilled upon that elite group of players that have come and gone. Some players stayed as legitimate, as elite. Some players were flashes in the pan that worked their way to that Madden cover. And I think it's easy to say that Josh Allen's a long-term superstar at this point, given the years of consistency that he's put up, over 40 touchdowns, over 3,500 yards, leading the Bills to a lot of big wins over these last few years. 13-3 last year, 3 losses by a combined 8 points. Maybe he did throw a lot of interceptions last year, more than he ever had, but I think a lot goes into that too. The fact they throw the ball just as much as anybody, the fact they rely on Josh Allen just as much as any team relies on any quarterback, just goes to show you that, that game is recognized, and game recognizes game, as they say these days. And to see Josh Allen make this moment a reality for himself, I think it goes to show you that the capabilities of silencing the doubters, silencing the haters, and going out and doing what you knew you could do. You just needed someone to give you the opportunity to do it. And Buffalo was the only team that was willing to give him that opportunity as other teams passed on him. And Buffalo made it happen. Buffalo went up and they made his NFL dreams a reality by trading up for him. And it's just a huge moment. I think the cover, the deluxe edition, you see the fans get the praise that they deserve. This great, passionate fan base get the praise that they deserve, being honored on the cover as well. And then the standard edition, where it's Josh Allen just hands to neck, hands on the jersey, clutching his jersey, ready to run out of the tunnel. That's what he does as he runs out to the fans that are screaming his name. This dude is a bona fide megastar, superstar. I think is undercutting it. But to see these last 6 years, it really put these last 6 years in perspective for me, that there were flashes, moments of brilliance that made me say to myself, this kid's going to make it. This kid's going to do it. He's going to be the guy. Have no fear. Josh Allen is here. And I think you guys go back quite a ways tuning into this show over the last 7 years that I've done this show. And, there were times where they're pretty bleak in terms of the quarterbacks that they had. And, that 2018 draft came, and I knew that they were going to take somebody. And I looked at these quarterbacks really closely, and the guy that really jumped out to me in terms of being a fit for the Buffalo Bills was Josh Allen. Mocked him to the team. A lot of people thought he's pretty raw. He was raw, no doubt about it. But I thought, hey, you know what? I'll take my chances with this guy because I just felt like he had the right temperament to get better. He seemed coachable, which is huge as an athlete and in life, I think. And, he was able to put his best foot forward and really be a sponge to guys like Brian Dable, Ken Dorsey, obviously Jordan Palmer, his head coach, Sean McDermott, quarterbacks coaches, Joe Brady, guys like that, over the last year or so. And I think the world of the guy. It's no secret, but I think it just confirms that everybody else does too. Everybody else is starting to see what I thought could happen with this kid, 6 years ago. And it's just a matter of checking off that final box. To hell with the NFL MVP, the individual accolades, any of that. Those are great for him. This is an individual accolade as well. But the first time a Buffalo Bills player will ever be on the Madden cover, and the Madden game goes back, more than 30 years ago. So, it just goes to show you the superstar power that this player has, Josh Allen. And it was really great for me yesterday to see the support for him at 500 Pearl. The Bills fans went out for an event. It was a private event. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it, but it was a private event that EA held that, I really enjoyed seeing some familiar fan faces at the event, paying tribute to him and clapping for him. I thought that was really great. So at this point, not much to be said other than the fact that the year is slowly approaching. The season is slowly but readily approaching. And I really can't wait to see what this season brings. I think the fact that you go on ESPN, you go on a lot of these national, sites or channels, sports-wise, and you're not hearing the Bills being talked about as a favorite for the Super Bowl this year like they were last year. And I'm completely okay with it. I like the fact that the Chiefs are being fluffed up. I like the fact that the Bengals are being fluffed up. I love the fact that Miami is being fluffed up, and especially the New York Jets, who are always an accident waiting to happen. So I'm really looking forward to the Bills being in this underdog role again, righting a lot of wrongs, changing a lot of opinions, turning haters into believers. That's what they've always been able to do in this era with Josh Allen, and I'm really excited for it. So this season, can't wait. And this episode was very fun for me to dive into the fact that we're hearing these new additions this late in the offseason. Guys like Leonard, Floyd, guys like Cameron Dantzler, just adding more competition, just adding more to this team. And the fact that they still might be able to reel in a big fish like Dalvin Cook or DeAndre Hopkins potentially is pretty crazy. Well done, Brandon Beane. And here we are, Dalton Kincaid, year one, rookie year. I'm really excited for him, what he brings to the table. Can't wait for training camp. I'm itching, calendars, got the dates circled. Can't wait. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Go Bills.